Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Winter Moon Podcast. I'm David.
I'm Brian.
I'm Joe.
All right, so we are here tonight to talk with you about a few things. We're going to do a mailbag continued segment for a little bit, talking specifically about Rebels, and Brian's going to take the lead on that segment. We're going to do some plugs in the middle of the show, specifically about Adepticon and about coffee and all those other good things that Winter Moon does. And we're going to talk about our primary objective breakthrough tonight. This will be the last in our primary objective series for the show. So, welcome in. And Brian, I'm going to pull up a letter that we received in our mailbag, and I'm going to turn it over to you to answer this. Can you talk about list building for synergy? I'm a Rebel player, but an example might be Separatists using crab droids to give Dooku a scout move, etc. I feel like I'm getting the hang of how to get the most out of all my Rebel units, but combining them for a cohesive strategy still escapes me. That's a pretty broad question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Brian, and we'll chime in as we get going here.
Yeah, so there's the strategy for Rebels has changed a little bit with 2.6. I mean, there's things that you used to be able to do a lot easier before 2.6, like Boba and handing out a lot of extra black dice with Boba's 3-pip card, which is a little bit more challenging in 2.6. The synergy, I think, all comes around to your heroes. Rebels is very, very hero-centric. Personally, there's a lot of great plays with Han Solo. There's a lot of great plays with Op Luke in supporting Op Luke with really, really good units like sleepers or even maybe a giant fleet squad, which you're going to have to be really careful because those guys die really fast. But there's a lot of what I have found to be most effective is supporting some very, very aggressive or very dangerous short range units with some very consistent long range units. So I'm a big fan of Rebel ATRTs with lasers. I did not like them a lot because I love flamethrowers. But I've played them a lot, and they're just very effective at laying down some covering fire so that your shorter range units can get to where they need to. You can also get by building your list if you want your shorter range units, if you want to get the most out of them, out of your Ewok slingers or your fleets with shotguns or your sleeper cells. You can protect those guys a little bit easier with things like the AA5 bus that allows you to move and then protect your guys by making basically a giant mobile terrain piece, so your guys can safely get behind them and move toward POIs that way. So I personally really like a smattering of long-range units and really scary short-range units. Operative Luke is my jam. He's my favorite. I look for every opportunity to maximize him in a list. And currently the way I have found to do that is either matching him with a couple of buses and as many sleepers as you can squeeze in, and triple ATRT. And then you just throw in as many naked core as you can. Some people really like heavy core units. The only heavy core unit or core unit that I would use a heavy in personally right now, I would think about would be a fleet shotgun. I know lots of people like the SX guns on their Rebel troopers. I've seen some people get some good effectiveness out of the ion guns for the Rebel troopers. And I've seen some pretty decent standby castles with vets and with the Mark IIs. But I feel personally the way I play Rebels is that I don't like my guys. I don't like spending a lot of money on something that I'm not going to be able to use. and so if you don't have a really good way to keep those guys safe to make sure you get the use out of those heavies, then just don't take heavies. just put those points into something you know you're going to get good use out of, like laser RTs, like sleepers, like Op Luke, like Han Solo, like So there are some cool strategies that I think we haven't seen very often. Things like I think there's room for Ahsoka with triple sleepers. With that 2-pip of Ahsoka's, allowing them an automatic dodge every time they get shot at. That's a pretty big deal. She gets Guardian. You pair that with Chewbacca, and all of a sudden those sleepers aren't dying. So you can play around that synergy. I think that's underplayed. Let's see. Help me out, guys. What other suggestions? What other Rebel synergies have you guys seen that you found to be effective?
Well, I wish I was taking notes because your comment about Ahsoka kind of made me think about a conversation that I'd had with, I believe it was the runner-up for Invader League last season, and we were talking about how Chewbacca and Sleepers is underexplored. And I realized that Ahsoka, not only does she give Guardian 2, it's like every time the Sleeper is declared as a defender, they gain a dodge. So
yes,
it just gets tougher and tougher to damage those Sleepers as time goes on. And they got that nimble keyword. And I was also thinking that, Nathan and I were playing a game the other day. I tried out Rebels for the first time in a long time, put Sleepers on the board for the first time. And I had Chewie in the list. He didn't do as much as I thought he could do, but at the same time, it's like, wow, if I had planned this better, I could see the strength of that synergy between the dodges and then Protector on Chewbacca to grab the crits, and then maybe like a medic and a bust to put sleeper models back. It requires a lot of timing, but at the same token, it could be a tough defensive combo, really defensive tech oriented kind of list. And then that conversation I had, I think his name was Ryan. Or Rayan, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but
Rayan on Discord, yeah,
Rayan on Discord,
cool
yeah,
guy.
we were talking, and he was thinking because I know he runs Commander Luke and Bad Batch, and he thinks that Bad Batch and Sleepers are going to get the nerf bat. That's kind of the speculation, because Bad Batch and Sleepers are pretty awesome units. They're like at the tippy top of Rebel effectiveness right now, along with Operative Luke, I think. But he was like, yeah, I'm looking at Ahsoka, getting ready, to think about if these points changes, or if these points change, I'm going to look at Ahsoka because of Swift Protector and things like that.
Yeah, and there's also some other strategies that I haven't seen. I played around with when 2.6 first dropped. I did things like Clan Ren in a bus with Han Solo, and then a whole bunch of close range units, and I would move the bus up and drop off Clan Ren and make sure that only one unit of Clan Ren could be seen. And then I'd play Reckless at the beginning of turn 2 and just let my opponent shoot at Clan Ren for the entire round while all of my close range stuff moved up. And that was before Sleepers. That was when I was just running just massive fleet squads just to try it out. So there's I have been surprised that Reckless Diversion, which is one of Han Solo's 2-pip, I've been surprised that we haven't seen more abuse of that because you can abuse that a lot.
I'll jump in there just off the Reckless Diversion because I really like playing Han, and I can't imagine taking Han and not playing around the Reckless Diversion. It's just really strong. By the way, my main mic went out. I don't know. It's defaulting to my webcam, so hopefully I sound okay.
It's fine.
Okay, yeah. So I just can't imagine playing around Reckless Diversion. Even some of these Rebel lists that have like 1 tournaments, they don't even play Reckless Diversion. And I just think it's such a strong card. So I'm going to use that as the segue to echo what you said about hero-centric. Like when you talk about synergy and Rebels, I think it's around the heroes and the command cards. Lando is amazing, right? Lando has Contingency 3. Contingency is very strong, especially in Rebels where you can bring so many strong command cards. So look at things like that. Look at Lando's 2-pip, which you can actually so you take the additional cards, but you still get value out of his 2-pip by discarding it, and you get to go with the unit you want to go with. That could be Bad Batch, right? That could be anyone. Or no, can it not be Bad Batch?
I don't think it can because he's got to have.
Does he issue the order? I'll have to. I think the wording is issue order. Okay, well, regardless, it's not Bad Batch, but it can be anybody you need to go to with first. Combine that with Han's 0-pip, and now any unit on the board goes first, except for Bad Batch, right? So like Lando's command cards. Of course, we know Han Solos are really strong. So like find that synergy. The Rebel medical bot is a hair bit cheaper than the Empire, because I think in general that they're like, oh, you're healing white saves more than red saves, I think is the thought process behind that price. But you know what Rebels have is they have the Mandalorians, right? So you bring Mandos, now those medical droids, so that's a synergy. You get more value out of the heal. Din Djarin, Grogu, you get another free heal. You combine those things, you can potentially get higher upside out of those keywords, out of the command cards. That's kind of what you're looking at with the Rebels, is find those keywords and command cards and figure out how you can leverage them the best.
Yeah, and there's also, there's other strategies that we've seen a little bit of, but not a lot. Things like trying to load up your token bag with operative tokens, with like Cassian and K2. K2 doesn't he doesn't take an operative he doesn't take up an operative slot. So you take Cassian and K2, infiltrate Cassian to make him an operative, and then also get 2 other operatives on top of that. And so you can load up your bag. I've tried it out. I haven't been able to make it work as well as I want it to. Cassian just doesn't feel super great right now in 2.6, but you might be able to get better use out of it than I could.
You know what really upsets me? That is someone who started Rebels and loved playing those heroes. Whatever addition change where they made it to where a field commander does not suffice for covert ops. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you used to be able to covert ops all of your commanders, and you didn't have to leave a quote unquote like true commander unit as long as you had a field commander to support it, right? And they changed that a year and a half back, 2 years back, and it killed all my fun lists. And now with Counterpart, you could have a field commander heavy with HQ uplink, and then run 5 operatives with K2. And almost like kind of work this perfect order control like thing with Rebels where you only have operatives in the bag, and like it's just you can't do it. You can't do it. Maybe it'll change. Maybe they'll change that back one day. Probably not.
Maybe. We do know that we're going to be seeing some changes in April. It would be cool to see some faction specific perks. Maybe those will come up, or maybe factions will have their force organization within an army change a little bit. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool.
One more thing about Rebel synergy is also don't just look at the strengths of what you're bringing. Look at the weaknesses of the faction too. And I think one of the biggest weaknesses of the Rebel faction is their courage values, and the fact that their core, they don't have all their core have 1 courage, and unlike other factions, the droids don't lose actions from being suppressed. The Empire have things like compel, like they get hurt more. So you might need to lean into things like Inspire and the command cards that remove suppression as well. So that's just something to think about with the Rebels.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Brian, in your games recently, like how much has suppression affected you? Because you were talking earlier, it's sort of like when we opened this segment. No heavies, or not any, I shouldn't say not any, fewer heavies on your core because you're afraid of the Courage 1 stymieing them. So how frequently does suppression come up for you as a Rebel player?
Pretty rarely, actually. I play really conservative with my Courage 1 units. And I bring heavies like buses or land speeders with onboard comms. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to play whenever there's a big suppression thing going on that I'm worried about. Then I know I can play what is that Rebel 2 pip? The one that gives all supports and heavies.
Turning the Tide or something like that?
Turning the Tide, that's it.
Yeah, Turning the Tide.
I can play the 2 pip Turning the Tide and give both of either 2 heavies an order and then pass those orders out to important units like Op Luke or Han Solo or not Din Djarin, he can't get it. But pass those orders off from my heavies because of the onboard comms. And the cool part about that card is it doesn't say that only units issued this order getting the Inspire. it says all support and heavy units gain Inspire.
So it's like Inspire 10 on your army.
It's
usually.
Inspire 10 if you're running 2 heavies and triple RTs.
So that's a perfect combo. Talking about synergy, that's a perfect combo to what I talked about with suppression. But I will say, Brian, I don't want to say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's the phrase that comes to mind. Like a lot of times with your core units, you don't take the heavies, so therefore your opponents aren't really shooting them or targeting them.
That's true.
So therefore it kind of takes care of itself because they're not a big target. If the super squads is another way to try to mitigate that, just because they get indomitable. But I know the couple times I played you with Rebels, you typically are running a lot of naked core, so I don't, it's not till mid to late game when I'm trying to take those guys out, so.
Yeah. And I really I'm just a huge fan of naked fleets. I feel like if you're going to run naked rebel troopers, then you're anticipating to move them onto POIs or double move them a lot and get those dodges on them. I play my naked core as naked fleets because I really like late game fleets that just double move or single move and just slap something. And yeah, it's a slot machine. You could get 0, but sometimes you get 6 and it's ridiculous.
Yep. For sure.
They get these like spikes where, it's like, oh, I'm shooting an armor unit. 2 crits, you get a little bit lucky. And then they also have charge, which is kind of crazy to have charge on a core unit. They get to use their pistols in melee. So then it's like the new sort of the new fleets are just way better than the old fleets. That's kind of just universally understood, I guess.
I was going to say one alibi, and Brian hit on this probably in 3 different ways, but maybe just to say it more direct. The Rebels have the AA5 speeder truck, right? Which is a unique unit. Shadow Collective has it, but that's not nearly as played as much as Rebels. So it is a premier unit right now, especially with the way the game works at close range, the LOS blocking. If you want to talk about just like fundamentally building around Rebels, that's a great unit to use and build armies. You can literally build armies around the buses strictly because of their line of sight ability, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Hopefully we answered this question on that.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
There's so much to talk about. Yeah.
There really is. Yeah. It's a pretty broad question. And I think, at some point here, we'll dedicate like an article or an episode to just Rebels in general going forward. I mean, it's this definitely was like a great sort of opening for that kind of a discussion, and I'm hoping that we answered this listener's question well enough to give him some understanding. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on a little bit to some plugs real quick, some, I guess, housekeeping, if you want to call it that. Winter Moon is going to be streaming at Adepticon, the Star Wars Legion World Championships. It is an open tournament. We have 2 heats, Thursday and Friday. That is March 27th and 28th, going into a top 64 on the 29th and a top 8 on the 30th. So it's going to be a great event. It's going to be the first, it's not the first 2.6 Worlds, right? It's the second one?
No, it's the first.
It's the
first. Okay, never mind.
2.6 came out in July-ish, I think.
Yeah, so it's their first 2.6 World tournament. And it's going to be great. And Winter Moon's going to have a big presence at Adepticon. We're going to be there with That's No Moon from across the pond, another podcast from the UK. You should give them a listen if you're so inclined to listen to Star Wars Legion podcasts. They're out of the UK, and they're just great people all around. And they're going to be with us there on stream, doing analysis and commentary. It'll be live streamed all 4 days of the tournament, starting about 9:00 Central. And Zane will be there. Zane,
yes.
A huge help to me. Really, like one of the best parts of the Legion community. He's going to be there,
Zane.
help me out. And it should be a great time all around. And so, if you're interested, go to Winter Moon on YouTube, youtube.com/Winter Moon Wargaming, and become a subscriber there so you don't miss streaming of the World Championships. And we also just want to let you all know, if you're listening, there is a Substack, where I write blog articles for Legion, including in-depth guides, and you can subscribe there for $5 a month to read those guides. And of course, there's plenty of free content on the blog as well. wintermoonwargaming.substack.com for all of that. And we also have a coffee shop. So that's ko-fi.com/wintermoonwargaming/shop. We have an STL file available of a POI that doubles as a pass token. It has the Winter Moon logo on one side for use as a POI, and the word pass on the other side as a pass token, so you don't forget your passes, which are extremely important in this game. If you are down activations or if you have advanced intel, don't forget to use your pass, and this token will help you not forget. So you can go there, it's $3, or pay what you want. So with that, we're going to go into our main segment, which is going to be the primary objective, Breakthrough.
So for Breakthrough, this is the sixth primary objective, so the last of the series, which means next week we'll get into the secondaries. So that'll be fun. And I do want to add, David, so sorry to delay things further, but
That's
for
fine.
those of you asking about tactics, being done with the primaries, hopefully next episode we plan on opening up. That should open up some space to talk some more like specific tactics and maybe break down like very like pinpoint something in the game of Legion and kind of break it down in depth. So if you have ideas or suggestions for the first few tactics we bring up, whatever that may be, definitely send them over to the mailbag so we can take your guys' feedback on that.
That'll be wintermoonmailbag@mail.com. We'll put the mailbag link in the description of the show as well on YouTube and on the Substack.
All right. So without further ado, Breakthrough. Okay, this is the deployment, if you've played it, where you are on the right corner. So all across the bottom right side, and it goes the furthest up the board of any deployment, if I'm not mistaken. So on your right side, the short edge of the board, it goes over halfway. And so what that ends up looking like is kind of two long L shapes, and the corners come pretty close to. I think it's the closest you can get deployment zones in the current system. Yep. And then two POIs are placed right near the corners. So the POIs are both very close on either corner, yet they're very far away from each other. So hopefully you've played it and that makes sense. If not,
4 POIs total.
Yeah, so 4 POIs total, two in each of those corners that kind of come up to each other. And then this one's pretty simple. There's no special text. It's just starting in the second round. During each end phase, players score 1 VP for each checkpoint within friendly territory that is not contested by an enemy unit. And then additionally, you score 2 VPs for each checkpoint within enemy territory that you secure. So there's a big difference there. The one in your friendly deployment zone, you just have to keep enemies out of it to score your VP. And then you have to actually secure your opponents to score the 2 VPs. Like that's where the big points come in. So if you think about it, if your opponent contests yours and secures it, it's kind of a 3-point swing in that regard. And so it's kind of big. This one you can get a pretty big lead on if you mess up.
So, if your opponent does better than you, yeah.
And maybe just to get the ideas flowing, I would say this one is the most, it requires you to split. There's no option. I think every other one has an option to where there's a way to play it by balling up everything. I don't know that can work in this one, like period. And maybe some extreme circumstance where you have some weird units that can do some things, but you have to split in some capacity. However, it doesn't have to be 50-50. It could just be one unit, but you have to split something. You absolutely have to. So I don't know where you guys want to take it away as far as maybe, okay, let's start with this. What units and what lists like Breakthrough? What types of units?
Things that are strong in melee. Because there's a lot of my brain immediately went to, well, if I have to keep my opponent from contesting, I need to engage them early because I need to slow them down from just withdrawing and moving into my into my POI. So I need to like walk forward quickly and, tie them up or do something to immobilize them or try to keep them out of my zone somehow in order to score my points. That's kind of like the beginning, I think, is just making sure that you score your 2 every round as like a baseline.
Units that can take up a lot of space around a POI. So things like a couple of snails surrounding one, like just like on your POI is right here, and then you have a couple of snails just guarding it to where they have to like go all the way around the snails in order to get to the POI like that way. You could play that defensively and then throw all of your other stuff on the other side. And I think that's an option. Force push is really strong in this one. Really, really strong. I mean,
you say that every week.
I do say that every week. It's because these are all like stand on points, and so force pushing stuff off is like just really good.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of just a truism. Like force push went up to 40 points, but it's like one of the best tools to like cause your opponent not to score or protect yourself. Like a defensive force push can be really vital. And I mean, a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm going to shove my opponent off the POI." Well, yeah, I'm going to shove an opponent off the POI so I secure theirs. Well, it's a matter of like you can't even let them contest your side. And so that defensive force push means they have to bring 2 units minimum. And, there's even more like, like honestly, any effect that like moves your opponent's units, incredible, just incredible in this game. And especially when it's based on like contesting objectives and by being a certain distance away.
So here, I'll say one that I say every week that I'm on here is mobility is really strong. However, to differentiate it from the other times I say it, unlike Brian, who always says the exact same thing, with no caveats. No, but all joking aside, I think it's only the extreme mobility that really shines in this one. Like your moderate mobility units, like they're fine, but they're not necessarily going to do anything crazy or special. What I mean by extreme are units that can get from one corner to the other corner, at least within 2 turns. Some of the units could do it within 1. So here's some examples. Geos can triple move, right? So they can definitely do it within 2 turns. Or they can kind of be in the center. They can play off more flanking. And in this one, it's kind of weird because you're kind of flanking in the middle on this one, right? Typically, your flanks are coming across the middle of the map. So they can kind of play that middle of the map and still threaten like a triple move, right? Droidicas are pretty fast, but more so I'm looking at your speeder bikes, your land speeder, triple moving with the compulse, your dewbacks on a new ways especially, but dewbacks can move pretty quick. Well, speaking of if we're going to go there, tauntauns are even faster, right? We talked about the A5 speeder bus. Throw an astromech droid on there, guys. You take 1 or 2 damage on average, and you move 3 times with the bus. You're almost going from corner to corner. It feels like. Another large base is the snail. So you guys get the idea. But the snail can double move and almost make it, over halfway across the map. It feels like so. These units are really good because you can position them to win one corner of the board. And then once you have the numbers you need, or you take that first attrition advantage on like turn 2 or even turn 3, they can actually get over to the other POIs and score them on turn 4 and 5. And regular units can't do that. Like, honestly, even like Mandos that move speed 3 aren't quite fast enough to do that super effectively, unless you're playing them in the center of the map. So, yeah. So that was my long way of saying fast units are good yet again.
So another thing that I love on these this objective is units that can sit and defend, but also go quickly to where they need to. Right. So things like if you have triple droidicas just sitting on your POI in your zone, and they just dodge standby, and they're just like, yeah, come on, I'm going to suppress you off it by the end of the game, no problem. You can't shoot off my standby, so yeah. They're just going to dodge. All 3 of my droidicas are going to sit here and dodge standby, and I'm going to crush your other side with everything else I've got. Like that's a really valid strategy, and it's super annoying to play against.
Yeah, and I think I'm guesstimating memory. I think the POIs, like actually touching POI to like closest edge to closest edge of both POIs in the corner, is right at range 3. I think it's right at range 3. But the point being is, the Droidicas are pretty close to sitting on their own POI and double moving to the other. So, anyways, that's a good point. And you're like, even your stationary units don't do bad on this one, right? Like an FD cannon or something like that. Or I guess that's the only stationary unit. But even your really slow, kind of almost like turret units,
Yeah, like
they do
Mark
okay.
IIs.
Like Vets, Mark IIs, even your
Shores and mortars.
Empire, your Empire stuff, your short troopers and mortars. They don't do too bad on this one because you don't feel so bad about sitting on a POI and shooting all the way over. So
this is one of the few ones that Shores and mortars feel like really, really great on. The other ones you have to have a really clear plan on how to get them where they need to go.
You can't be all in on them, but yeah, a couple of them are good. Yeah, can be pretty good on this. Okay, yeah.
The other one, other Empire support units that really like this are the range troopers.
Yeah,
that double spur can surprise your opponent, but they're also great at holding down the objective.
The range troopers are nice with the armor 1 and the red saves. However, the long range units in general, I am a little leery on this one. I like them better on like recover or even shifting, but
it's the double suppression shot though.
They are if you take the suppressive gun. So no, range troopers is an exception, but you do need to be careful with just ranged units because things you start close. It's potentially people are up in your grill pretty early on if you're contesting a POI.
Who really likes this are things like Boba on his 1-pip because you can double move into the POI into melee with some other unit and then whipcord them. Also, Din with an Amban rifle on his 1-pip can double move into melee, get it, slap something, and immobilize them, and all of a sudden you're denying your opponent.
You stay safe. Yeah, and you stay safe. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, what about factions? Does CIS struggle on this one or no? Like, is there some factions that do better than others? Do they want to stay close together, CIS? I feel like they kind of do.
Depends on if you run a B1 ball, and I think a lot of times you do, I think just for the order control. And so, I mean, I didn't have a hard time when I played this objective because I was playing units that were fairly independent. Like I wasn't using the B1 ball. I was playing it like I was playing Rebels.
So you played, you played that CIS configuration where you don't have perfect order control from B1s and things like that.
Right. You play Aqua. It's like Aqua B2s. And you just say, okay, I'm going to be fairly independent. I'm just going to improvise my way out of my bag and try to, cobble something together. And, maybe put a defensive force user or put Grievous on one point to try to, maybe lunge in there and do some damage and contest. And then on the other side, I have my Aquas that are creating a wall and just like, they're just hard to remove. And so, I mean, I think if your CIS list is comfortable splitting, I think it's fine. But I think a B1 ball would suffer a bit on this objective unless you have, like, I don't know, maybe Stap Riders. But Stap Riders are like the least played support in CIS right now because they're the most fragile.
Yeah. I guess each faction probably has some configurations and builds that are okay on this and some that are not so great. Like anything else, the super high X, this might be one of the best ones for them.
You know what we didn't mention? We didn't mention the Wookiee Battle Force. I've seen the Wookiee Battle Force succeed on this with Fluttercraft, doing attack run.
Oh, the Fluttercraft.
The attack run flutter with speed 3.
I mentioned all the fast things. I forgot about the flutters.
Yeah, the Fluttercraft.
They're very fast.
Yeah, let's not sleep on the Fluttercraft. Let's also not sleep on the fact that Wookiees are crazy in melee. Let's also not sleep on Kashyyyk Defenders, the ranged Wookiees. Being, with their bowcaster for Pierce or the suppressive gun, even speaking of unexplored units, suppressive gun bowcaster Wookiee, or not suppressive gun, but on a suppressive gun Kashyyyk Defenders, unexplored.
Range 4?
Getting that range 4 snipe off, and it's a little less relevant on this objective just because of the the fact that the deployment zones are like up the short edge a little bit, so you can deploy off the side of the board or off the short side of the board and approach really fast if you have a scout move.
Oh,
That's something that I remember too. Is that like BX droids with their Scout 3 kind of can go really fast on this objective and just get into your opponent's face.
You can freaking melee. Honestly, like even a dewback flamethrower standard without new ways, you can get flamethrowers off on turn 1.
Yeah.
Things like that, right? So that's a perfect segue from what units and lists are good to what are some turn 0 tips, tricks, and pitfalls. Because I think
deploying on the short edge.
Because you can get short edge like right in the face of your opponent. You can, I mean, some of these units can dang near get like within range 1 of your enemy POI turn 1. If you want to.
Scout, any of a scout. So you're looking at your ARC troopers, you're looking at your sleepers, you're looking at those are guys are going to. You have to respect their range and where they can deploy from in this setup. Because if you don't, you're going to lose a flank really hard.
You want to know something interesting? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but reinforcements happens at the beginning of the end phase, right?
That's correct.
So it happens before scoring. So I am super confident that something like a snail with reinforcements can land on enemy POI turn 1 very easily.
Oh, yeah.
Very easily. Yeah, I mean, super easily, right? So you can, if you want to, you have that snail with defensive protocols and shenanigans. Like, yes, it's going to die, but you could steal 2 VPs on turn 2 and 3 before it dies. I guess you don't score on turn 1, so probably not worth it. But you can still get them situated.
Oh, it's so fast though off the short edge. It's insanely quick.
Yeah.
And it's also, if you're playing normal droids, it transports something too. So you're basically throwing 2 units at your opponent saying, "Come get me."
Yeah.
You could do Magna Guard or something crazy. Whip Magna Guard.
Or Black Sun.
Or Black Sun, yeah.
Or Geos with the pike and they fly into melee and overrun on turn 1.
That could be something.
Could that work? That could be something. I don't know.
They could. Yeah. If they don't get shot to pieces.
They don't get obliterated. And
maybe there's there could be a little wall for them to hop behind. You never know.
Yeah, like a snail wall.
Well, now I want to try Transported Magna Guard because that just inspired me to put that in a list for my league night. I'm going to try that. I'm going to put Grievous and a Magna together.
Okay, so short edge. That'd be a good combo. Short edge is a pitfall or a tip. Depending on who's taking advantage of it. What other like deploying strategies in general? Maybe now's the time to talk about like what are the splitting strategies? Like if you could categorize, you probably have like the try to win both, the 50-50, kind of try to stack up to win both, or do you go like salvage a couple VPs on one and all in the other? Like
this is tough because it is one of the few,
so hard.
It's so hard because it's the like one of the few objectives that your split almost has no chance to help out the other side. Like almost no chance. They're very, very small few circumstances can you get from one side to the other, and it's going to take you a full turn. and so
probably 2 turns. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you kind of just have to hope that your sides hold out and that you win, like you win the side. Like the deployment is so. This is a really fun list or fun objective to practice over and over and over. Just turn 0 and turn 1, and then after turn 1, talk through it with your opponent. Like say, okay, this is what we would do. This is what you would do. Okay, reset and practice deploying again. Because you want to learn how to split your army and respond to your opponent splitting their army to where you can hold out long enough on one side and win another side, or potentially win both sides. You just don't want to lose both sides. And as long as you're winning one side faster than your opponent, then that puts you up on the VPs.
Dude, that's great. Oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I just want to preface this a little bit and say, like, so what Brian's referring to, I think, is the fact that there's a bluffing element here where you have as many activations as you have, your opponent has as many activations as they have, and you're like debating within yourself, like, what will my opponent do? how hard will they commit? There's like a question you have to ask, and like how much am I willing to risk on one side or willing to risk on the other side? And there's that bluffing element. It's sort of like, well, if he puts Anakin here, should I put Grievous there or should I put Dooku there to challenge Anakin and like duel that side, or because I have Makashi? You have to like think really about like what the keywords that are involved and like what the various strengths and weaknesses. And it's sort of like, well, if he puts his bus on this side, then I can put my anti-armor on that side too. And there's sort of like a guessing game that you play. And it's like Brian said, like practicing that repeatedly is a great idea, because that's going to help you build sort of like your game sense. Because in a tournament, everything's basically random. Like you don't have like full knowledge of what you're ever going to face before you walk up to a table. And so, knowing the properties of units in isolation helps you, take a really educated guess and take some of that unknown out of it when you're deploying on this objective.
The bluffing is big on this one. I'm a big bluff guy. I've mentioned it on the podcast on some of the other objectives, how you can try to get your opponent to overcommit. It makes the most difference on this one. That being said, I'm trying to give all the advice on this. This is by far my lowest winning percentage objective. I always lose this. And I think it's because I try to get too fancy and I overthink it. And honestly, I try to get too fancy with my bluffing and I'm like, I'm out of position. There's been games where at the end of after we finish turn one, we've all deployed. And I'm like, I've lost. We fired like one shot against each other. I was like, and I'm just like, dang it, I lost. Okay, all right. Can we start up? And go back to your point, Brian. I agree. This is one where you can get a ton of value over playing. Maybe even take it into turn two, like finish out turn two, kind of see how it feels to know like what that really felt like. And if you're someone practicing for a tournament, you can do that with all the objectives, but definitely this one, it'll help. And I would say a lot of times you can get more out of playing. If you're going to play 5 or 6 rounds or, 5-round game, you might be better off playing 2 rounds or 1 round, 2 rounds and 2 rounds. If you're actually like really trying to hone your skills and practice the objective, you might get more out of that than playing a whole game. Maybe not as fun. Maybe that's not you, but for some people that will work, but yeah, the bluffing piece is huge. Let's see. Tips and tricks. You mentioned the force or like the power piece, David. When your opponent, that's another bait. It's not just about you bluffing. It's like, can you bait out them to put that Dooku on that corner, and you just say, okay, I'm not going to put anything over there Dooku likes to deal with, right? And just you put a couple. I want to say throwaway units, but you put a couple units that Dooku can't push and pull. Maybe they're vehicles, maybe they're whatever. He can't force push them. He can't 3-pip them and do all his tricks to them. Maybe that's the droidicas, like whatever they are. And you just play defense and you try to hold off those couple extra VPs and just smoke the other side of the map, right? Just kind of concede that one corner. And it's just like, okay, it might come down to the secondary. It could be very big on this one in that regard.
Yeah.
The last time I played Breakthrough, I think was like a month and a half ago at a tournament in Brevard County, and I remember 2 things about it. One was that it was like, I don't know where the hell my opponent's going to put his AAT, because it was me playing my Geonosian Aqua list against the 112 B1 Separatist invasion force, and I didn't have a flame spider, so I was like, let me try this. And I think what ended up happening was I split my aquas in half. I put 1 aqua on the left side, 1 aqua on the right side, and I put I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 B2s on the right side, and I put the rest of my army on the left. And he dropped his AAT against most of my army, and I thought to myself, man, if he had dropped it against the weak side, I would have been screwed. Like, he would have just blown right through my defenses with this AAT with an impact shell. My aquas took like 7 wounds at one point from the impact shell. It was pretty nuts. But because his AAT couldn't really move around. Our board was kind of dense, so that kind of helped me a little bit. Was my board was dense, and I managed to get up on the secondary, which I think was recon mission. Just looking at more units than he did, and I guess the reason I bring this up was because I think it came to like the end of round 3, and I was like, okay, I am going to lose unless I make an all-out attack, was what I thought to myself. And so I just pushed with literally everything as hard as I could on the left side against the AAT, because I said, look, it's just B1s. Just go kill them. was what I said to myself. And it was really interesting because he was using the super squads, and so the B1 super squads were like, oh, I'm going to just like dunk you because I have so many dice and I have surge access because he had aggressive tactics on attack droid, right? So all these B1s are surging. And it was really tough, but at the same time, it was like, if I hadn't just made a strong decision to attack the left side, despite the presence of the AAT, I would have certainly lost that game.
You had to commit.
I had to commit. Yeah.
With the AAT, that makes me think the big vehicles on this. If I was to give a generic tip, that generally is probably a safe bet or a smart play. I actually like playing the big vehicles right down the middle, which sounds odd, but like just right down the middle, they can shoot across the map turn 1, still get value out of their shots. And so they just scoot right towards the center line. They can shoot, can't left, can't right, because you got the free pivot on them. And then depending on how everything finishes out with deployment and how the attrition goes at the beginning, they can scoot left or they can scoot right and go to either corner. Because the big vehicles are fast enough to do that. Even the ATST potentially, he can come down the middle and just start move shooting. He'll get on the POI in time to make a difference. It works better with the snail and something like the AAT, but Brian's shaking his head. He's not convinced on that tip.
Because you can even give reinforcements to the AAT and the snail because they're AI units.
Yeah.
So you can deploy them turn 1, move on the board, shoot your shot, and then you can use your reinforcements to like make your decision for you.
And after Brian shook his head, I have to rephrase. He's shaking his head. I feel like he already has a point. I'm gonna try to counter it before he says it. I'm not suggesting it is the thing you should always do with vehicles, but more so than any other unit, I think you can get away with going center line and not committing them. So that I wanted to say that they might be the type of unit that you can do that and get away with it. But Brian, did you have thoughts on that?
I think I like using those vehicles if they're range 4 to be inside center. You're committing to one side, but you're going to deploy far enough toward the right side that you can move up, take a big range 4 shot to help out your flank on the back side, and then back up and be close enough to where you start scoring back on your side where you deployed. But so you're more center than most of your other units, but you're still able to very easily just 1 or 2 moves get to where you're threatening a POI, but you can still get a range 4 volley to help out your weaker flank or your stronger flank, whichever one you want to do, because those early volleys, those round 1 volleys, really can decide whether or not you're going to win that flank. So I mean, I think if I'm running a snail, I'm gonna be like a little bit center, a little bit centered,
but close to your POI. Yeah,
closer to my POI. Take a shot on my far POI, and then back to my POI.
Fair enough. When do you play snails, Brian?
Never.
Okay.
But that's what I would do, Joe.
That's what you know.
I would do if I had a snail.
I know you would be very good with snails. You'd be very good.
I would love snails.
You'd be the best snail player. Like, you'd be the best.
So when are you switching to experimental droids?
Man, I'm telling you, that's experimental droids, snails with the BXs in the poison. Like I have a shirt with like an entire poison token on the back. Like I love my droids with poisons. I love them, and so we'll get there again someday.
Yeah, when you stop playing Rebels, when your romance with Rebels ends.
I can't.
Oh
Luke's-
man,
You can't.
My
So-
romance with Luke is never ending.
No.
so moving on to mid game, end game on this one. I don't know that there's much to talk about mid game. We kind of talked about the mobility and maybe like trying to shift. There's only a few units that can really get across. You're kind of committed on this one. Any thoughts or tips thinking about like closing out? Let's keeping the secondaries out of it. Obviously, if the secondaries are in the equation, then like you're probably pointing towards those. That might be your ticket to win. But just focusing on the primary. Anything come to mind like what you can really do to close it out? You can kind of dive like intercept with the intel tokens. You can dive in to steal a VP. Except everybody has the token in essence on this one, right? Like they
Yes.
can dive in to steal a VP. So like diving in and kamikazing those units and could be a strategy where you lose out on attrition, but you steal a VP 2 or 3 times. But
Yeah, I would say late game. So this is the kind of a situation where you want to hold on to. Don't get too hasty with important cards like Whipcord for Boba, or Vader's Might for Vader, or Dooku's 3-pip, or Luke's Serve Your Master Well. Like those things that can either stop movement or move extra units off of POI. Don't get too hasty in using those too early in the game, because if you are patient with them and your guy's safe enough, he's not injured, right? You're not risking losing that card. If you have the opportunity to hold on to this till later in the game, because it'll just straight up win you the games. So don't be too hasty on playing those too early if they're not going to award you the maximum amount of VPs that you want. Is basically what I'm saying.
yeah, that makes sense. David, you got anything for any other tips closing out games on this one?
Well, I think like the big question here is like, just really counting unit leaders. And it kind of relates to what Brian is saying. It's sort of like you're counting unit leaders available and saying like, how realistic is it for me to think about winning the opposing point? Because I think this objective is really, the emphasis is really about winning the opposing point. Because that's where like the big VPs are scored, right? That's how you get ahead, is by denying your opponent contesting your home objectives, and then like really like securing that second one. So I think at some point it's like, I'd say maybe like by the end of 2 or the end of 3, maybe the beginning of 3, actually, end of 2, you're just trying to count up unit leaders and say, how realistic is it if I push forward with everything I got that I can conquer my opponent's objective? And I think that will make itself clear by the end of the second round.
That kind of is a counter argument, or is kind of a juxtaposition to the strategy of like sending one unit in to steal a VP. Because if you do that, you're probably losing too many units to actually secure the point by the end of the game.
Right.
And like you said, securing is the big points.
Well, I think it's the tactic is if you like, so what you're doing, I think, is you're sending like a unit in last to deny a VP, basically to put your opponent behind slightly. And then you're following up with that big push. And so units that are good for that, I mean, Droidicas really stand out to me because I'm a big Droidica player. I'm going to wheel mode in there, on like activation 12 or something, or 11. I'm going to wheel mode in there. I'm going to deny your VP. You can't push me or whatever because it's too late. And then I'm going to pop out of wheel mode with 4 shields, and you're going to like not be able to remove me quickly because the rest of my army is barreling down on that POI. I
really like the dewbacks for that too, like you mentioned at the beginning, Brian, because they get to move pretty far, and they get a nestle up into melee, right? Like unlike Droidicas and stuff. But now we've all given our weekly tip, because David, that's usually your go-to is counting the units.
Oh yeah,
it's absolutely essential. Like it's absolutely it's fundamental to winning Legion and contesting POIs. But yeah, we all went to our go-to this week for sure.
For sure.
So real quick, just a small for those of you out there, those listeners who are really wanting to get those riot troopers on the table, this is your objective.
This is the one.
This is the one that they're going to do. They will perform the best on this objective, in my opinion, than any other objective. because they'll have the easiest time getting into melee in this objective. Personally, I think.
Don't be discouraged if you. I wanted to use harsh language. Don't be discouraged if you don't do well on this objective the first 1, 2, 5, 10 times you play it. Because no, like this is one where I'm like, I build a list and I say, oh, this list is perfect through breakthrough. And then I say to myself, not putting that in there because I don't feel confident on it. Like it could be the best list in the world for breakthrough. And I'm just like, I'd rather not deal with that because it's tough to play. But the flip side is, if you get a lot of practice on it and you have a decent army for it, you honestly can beat your opponent just by experience, more so than any other objective, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. It's a one that I avoid because I'm just more familiar with the other ones.
I'm scared of it.
Yeah, I have a slight allergy to it myself.
Yeah, I'm scared. I will advanced intel. Keep that, baby. We're getting rid of breakthrough.
Yeah.
I'm vetoing breakthrough.
Well, let's swing on into our final segment, and I'll just say it's about me because I went to a tournament this weekend and I went 3-0.
Woo!
Yeah, I did it. I prepared, and
there was at least one player that you put a whooping on, but
I didn't say that in those terms.
No, let's just not say any names. Yeah,
disavow.
He knows. He knows.
He knows who he is. All right. Well, it was a Florida local, a Black Flag Gaming Company in Brandon, Florida. It was a really, really fun time. We had 16, I believe. We were aiming for 20. We got 16 after attrition, so it was still, fairly well attended. I went 3-0 with my Dooku Persuader list, which I've written extensively about over at the blog. But I made a pretty key switch up. In the middle of the list, I used to have 3 B2s. I switched out for 1 B2, 4 E5S B1s, and a B1 with a medical droid. And that put me up at 12, and I think that really made a huge difference. The E5S overperformed all weekend.
Did you go from 10 to 12, David?
No, I'm from 11 to 12.
11 to 12? Okay.
Yeah, because I had 3 B2s, 2 B1s, and I went for 2 5 B1s and 1 B2.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and then 3 Droidicas and then a snail. No impact shell this time. Actually, I took the impact shell off, and I was kind of glad that I did because the ion cannon is plenty.
Yeah.
The ion cannon's actually better than the impact shell, but not just because you get 1 less point of impact / critical, but you get that ion in there, and it never has to refresh.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't have to refresh.
Have it.
And turn 1, you're shooting range 4, and then by turn 2, you can shoot range 2. That snail is so dang fast.
Mm-hmm. Reinforcements will get you to range 2 on anything.
There's not that in-between shot like you might get with like ATSTs and other heavies.
Exactly. You'll be able to get there with reinforcements. You'll get exactly where you need with reinforcements like every game. And my first game was against another CIS player. It was a Dooku face-off. It was a pretty tough game. We were playing shifting priorities, and we were both being so respectful that we literally forgot there were 5 objectives. We both deployed across each other on 3 objectives on the left side. And it was like marked targets with aqua droids, and it was a little bit goofy. We had some mistakes on both sides, and we were just getting warmed up. It was first game of the day. But at the same time, we had some funny moments. There was a moment where an ordnance token killed a marked target leader. Because it was in marked aqua behind terrain.
You don't get the VP off that.
You don't?
What? Did you? No, because it has to be during a ranged attack. Does it
really?
Not? I'm pulling it up, David. Uh-oh.
I didn't know this.
I didn't know that.
When a unit with marked target token is defeated. No? Okay. No, I was wrong. What?
When it's defeated.
I was confused.
You're trying to invalidate everything you've done, David.
I'm trying. Look.
My world was going to collapse.
You've won 2 tournaments in a row, I think, right? Like I'm trying to bring it down a peg. No, I was wrong. I scared you.
You scared me. Yeah, I was like, no, was I cheating the whole time? No, I don't want to do that. I don't ever want to do that.
No.
But anyway,
I'm thinking of bounty. I think I'm thinking of bounty.
I think it might be bounty. Yeah, but ordnance was able to kill a marked target, and then ordnance was clutch. Actually, I'll tell you a story about. I'm going to skip the middle game because it was still a good game, but we were playing a bunker assault, and I had this really goofy shot where a B2 full boated into Anakin and did 5 wounds, which should never happen.
Oh
That just should
that's
never happen.
nasty.
And I basically won the game off that because Anakin couldn't do anything. And like Bad Batch, we were holding the line on the other side of the bunker with a snail, the super tack, and all the B1s, and we were able to hold the line against Bad Batch, and like he couldn't even secure it for one round because there was just too much stuff over there. We actually tied in the final round, for 4-4 on the POI with Bad Batch getting in the melee and just like diving everything else in, so these other ARC troopers couldn't come in and melee, and it was kind of a mess. But the reason I bring up Ordnance so much is that it wasn't even just the fact that it was Ordnance able to wound armor; it was Ordnance able to suppress something, so it couldn't count for scoring. Because my final round opponent, he was playing Vader Dues, but he was playing like Op Vader and stuff, and so he was Vader's miting me and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But the reason I bring up Ordnance is because by the end of 4, I was in a position where I was going to lose instantly. I was down like he had 9, and I think he was about to score the final point to make it 12-10 or something like that. And Ordnance went off, and it did the final 2 suppression on a Courage 2 unit. And because he didn't have Commander Vader, because he had Op Vader, his panic value was 4. And Ordnance did the final 2 suppression I needed to panic his objective holder, or not his the unit that was contesting on Recover the Research. It was able to put that unit into panic and not counter for scoring, and so that prevented him from scoring 12. He scored 11, and so I was able to get a 5th round.
One more turn to even the score.
Exactly, one more turn to even it out, and so it was like 11 to 10 going into the 5th round.
Sounds like a butt whooping. I don't know.
It wasn't. It was very close.
There I go again.
He could have stolen the game right there, but Ordnance saved my life. Ordnance gave me the chance to come back.
Sagan, how many did you roll in Ordnance? 2 or 3?
I rolled 2 hits.
2. Oh, so you just needed 2. Okay, so not super lucky.
No,
about average, but yeah.
Yeah, it was 2. It's 2 black dice.
It's got to come
3 black
through.
dice. Yeah.
My last 3 ordinances have blanked out, and on hitting 3 ATRTs at the same time, they've blanked out. And
that's pain.
Yeah,
that's
I actually think it's the worst one. I would never take it at any list.
That's your personal experience. I'm the opposite.
Oh, by the way, sorry, I cut you off, Brian, but
I was just wondering.
Sorry. I just want to say sweep and clear is what I was thinking about, because sweep and clear, Ordnance doesn't get you a kill for that. Anyway,
right?
Because it has to be a friendly unit. My bad, Brian. Go ahead.
Was he running Krennic? Was Krennic his commander then?
Yeah, Krennic was the commander.
Okay. So it was Krennic's courage value that the unit that got suppressed or panicked was using then.
Yeah, exactly. So it was 2. Yeah. So I only needed 4. I only needed 4 total suppression. I had put 2 suppression on it with E5S shots, and then the Ordnance came in and delivered the last 2, and that let him only score. I think I held him to like 3 VP instead of 4, I think. And that put us at 11-10. And the game ended. I had to end up like contesting all 6 POI at once in order to prevent Vader's might from getting me back to under 4 labs contested. And then it was even goofier because he had a surface scan in the back, and my Dooku moved, force pushed the surface scanner back into friendly territory to deny that VP. So it was a crazy game.
Play. That's nice.
It ended up 14-14, and I was ahead about 200 on kill points because I had killed 2 Black Suns, more than he had killed of mine. But he really made a great game of it. It was one of the best games of Legion 2.6 I've ever played. But it was a really, really good game. But it was one of those like, would not have come back if certain things had not gone specific ways.
Yeah,
would not have come back.
Ever since you mentioned that one, seems like a really close game. That's what I've been saying the whole time.
Yeah, strafing. And this also makes me think about strafing run, because strafing run has that potential to like, panic stuff.
Yeah,
off the points.
Strafing run protects against the flanks, right? And that's going back to the Rebel discussion at the beginning. That's where the Courage 1 can come into play too. A Courage 1 unit can't sit off on the edge of the board and feel safe against things like even Ordnance. Ordnance on a Courage 1 unit. Yeah.
So Ordnance isn't, you're not punished by taking ordnance. In fact, you could take both ordnance and strafing run on your list and have 2 chances at this effect to panic something with extra suppression at the end of the round. It seems quite potent to me.
Yep, I agree. I've recently come around. I didn't like strafing run at first, because I feel like it was just not affecting as many units as I wanted it to. But you can just make it sure that you're only affecting the one unit that you need to affect.
Yeah.
And I have traditionally my advantage cards have been advanced intel, cunning deployment, and ordnance.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, in some of my lists, I've traded out cunning deployment for strafing run, depending on their makeup and their strategy, because it's just really valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, so it finished out just 1-3-0 with 16. It's just a perfect.
Well, I think there was another 3-0. I can't remember who it was though. I have to look at the standings. But
oh yeah, I guess there would be 2. Yeah, of course.
There would be 2 of us. Yeah, and I had better breakers.
How did you feel about the Vader dewbacks in general against your army? Was it tough?
So it was tough because he had 2 flame rifles, and I did end up eating, I think, 2 flamer shots. But the trick with that was there was a dewback that I managed to panic to prevent a 3rd flame rifle shot. I think that was a huge thing. I really think he suffered a lot from taking out Vader. I really do. Like, Commander Vader would have been.
I was wondering how he afforded the extra act, because I have trouble getting to 11 the way I like it. Mm-hmm. When I've been running Vader dues, that makes sense. I didn't connect the dot that he had Op Vader. I know you had mentioned that at the beginning, even.
Yeah, Op Vader Krennic was the thing, and I think not running Commander Vader was a big problem. And he mentioned to me afterwards,
I think the dewbacks need it because suppression can stop them.
Yeah, this helped. He said to me after the fact is that this helped me cross this list off for Worlds, because this is not cutting the mustard anymore.
Fair enough.
I had a great. I think if he had if Commander Vader with inspiring presence, I think he would have won the game pretty handily. Even though Vader was slow, even though there were some things that Op Vader was doing that Commander Vader can't do, like force throwing a droideka to kill it off the objective, for example, off of Relentless. Things that Vader would have to do if he took Saber Throw instead of Choke.
Wait, he forced through 2 dice.
Yeah, to do the last wound. To do the last wound.
Okay, nice.
On a droideka, yeah. So just to kill my surface scanner and make Dooku have to pick it up. It was awkward too. I had my own surface scanner pushed into my territory as well to put me down points.
Oh no!
It was so he showed me how to do that, and I was able to do that back to him later in the game. It was kind of funny.
Did he see that coming, or did he mention that? Like, because you mentioned Dooku withdrew move. Like, you don't typically think a Force user is going to just withdraw and like double move to like sneak a.
Yeah, that was another way that I got lucky too, is that he didn't remember that withdraw now lets you get your full actions. You just can't. You just can't attack or standby.
Right. Yeah.
So he did not see that Dooku could just withdraw, move, force push.
Nice.
And still do the thing. And not only that, contest another point on top of it. So that Vader's might, it was like, I have Vader's might and I have force push and I can kill something and I can stand on a point. But if my opponent's contesting all 6, I can't actually prevent him from contesting 4 labs, because I can only take him off of 2 labs, because I can throw one thing and push another.
So, David, your article you wrote about your Dooku snail, you call it a Ferrari because it runs so well. That was your triple B2 version, right?
That was with the triple B2 version,
right? So, what is this? What car is this one?
I don't know. McLaren? I don't know.
Oh shoot! So you like this one better? You think?
I like this one better. Yeah, I think I was not a believer in the E5S before. Nathan made me a believer. I think the E5S is a real thing. I thought more B2s was better because they just couldn't be beat for efficiency, but the flexibility of the B1 E5S plus the range 3 able to affect more POIs in general, plus the fact that if it's a 56-point unit that ignores courage basically, and like if it pops off and you get like 2 wounds on another unit with it, it's like crazy value. There's just a lot going for the E5S B1s.
Do you feel strongly that that one of those two something close to the configuration you have is the best way to run CIS. Maybe with the exception of EXD being like hand in hand, very strong, but quite a bit different. EXD is quite a bit different.
Is it the best way to run CIS? I don't know if I can say that much. I think it's my best CIS list that I've ever done.
That's fair. Yeah.
I think that Nathan has a better one. I think Dooku Aquas with double ion spider is a real contender because he can fit more E5Ss than that one.
I think that's a meta. That's a reaction to the meta because the ion spiders is kind of maybe the trump card in a semi-mirror matchup of CIS, and does well even into the Rebel buses and ATRTs and things.
Yeah, it's more of a meta call.
So I don't necessarily think it's more balanced overall, better list, but I think it might be the better list into the meta right now. I could see that argument.
Yeah, I could see that. Just like when you say like on balance, it's like more the Dooku Persuader is like a little bit tougher. It's a little bit more flexible.
It's more flexible. That's more. It can adapt better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got higher adaptability. I mean, I run some pretty spread out objectives. If we want to talk battle deck real quick, I run like bunker assaults, shifting priorities, and I run recover the research. And then I run secondaries. I believe I was running surface scan, recon mission, and mark targets. Just because B1s are easy to hide. They take a lot of wounds to kill, and they can hide.
So you run bunker assault instead of breakthrough. Because breakthrough would be another one where you can like spread out, but you don't want to split that hard.
No, it's easier to like sit because I was doing stuff like where I was, shifting droidicas from one point to the other on bunker assault.
Yeah,
because they're kind of on the bunker assault's kind of like a square, right?
Yeah,
and so I'm on like the inside of the square.
Bunker assault's like built for droidica range. It's really good.
It really is. It's kind of annoying how easy it is for them to move.
Yeah,
they can just go from one bunker to the other really quickly.
Yeah, and I cut you off as I always do on the condition or not conditions. What are they called?
Advantages. I mean, the conditions are what Brian was saying. What Brian settled on was advanced intel, ordnance, and cunning deployment.
Okay,
but I would consider swapping cunning deployment for strafing run. I don't know how good a dodge is.
I think cunning deployment, and you have a super tack, right? Yeah,
I do.
So cunning deployment in CIS feels stronger than some other. I think some factions might just go ordnance strafing run. They're not too worried about a dodge or two on some couple random units.
Yeah,
but seems pretty good on CIS. Seems pretty good on exemplar type things.
Yeah, on defense protocol units, it's crazy good.
Defense protocol, crazy good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's where I was thinking. It's like, I have a defense protocol snail and a super tack. I'll just put it on the super tack and the snail, and then if for some reason I have to go earlier than activation number 11, then I'll be less vulnerable to being shot.
We're gonna get to the advantages someday, but like ordnance strafing run is always a toss up to me, and I don't know. Well, where I lean now is I'm never taking ordnance again forever, but like literally 3 in a row, great ordinances that blanked out, and at least one of them straight up wins me the game. Anyways, I needed one wound. You know what I mean? I needed one. It's one of those things. So I'm out on ordnance, but no, that was all joking aside, like that one's exactly that one's kind of a toss up to me. And what I found, sometimes I have ordnance and my opponent has 0 armor. Yeah. Okay, at least it does a suppression or two, but like strafing run's always a threat to like flank units, especially if you can buffer it with 1 suppression before you throw it, type thing. Anyways, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole today, but that one's the toss up. It's 50.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, overall, it was a great tournament, and I got my little LVOIS trophy from the trophy kit.
Nice
job. I have it to put it in my display shelf. A little 3D printed trophy, and it was a great event, and I want to say thank you to Black Flag and of course LJ, who was there to run it in person, which was really nice to have LJ to run it in person, and of course everybody that brought the terrain, and all my opponents were great. We all had a great time, so
that's
awesome. It was a really fun event.
Any newcomers? Any new news?
Any new people?
New people, brand new guys that you haven't seen in the local shop that you right?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah, good. I played a guy on TTS a few times. We became good friends. We love to talk D&D. after the games. He goes by General Flint, so shout out if you're listening. But I've been telling him he's about 2 hours away from you guys, if I remember right. I'm like, get up to those tournaments. He goes to school down there at one of the Florida universities. I forget which one.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I hope he comes to our events.
Yeah.
Because they're totally worth it. We run some great stuff over here in Central Florida and Western Florida.
Yeah, he's tired of beating up on all his buddies, he says, in his dorm room. Yeah. So I told him to get out
here. I'll
find a tournament. Yeah.
I'll teach you the ways of the Force.
All right.
All right, that wraps it up for this episode of the Winter Moon Podcast. I'm David.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Joe.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Peace.